leftovers, y'all. Where
the leftovers.
we take some topic, question, something, and we address it in 15 minutes or less, sometimes more, but rarely, without notes, without preparation. So our question today, Travis, we did actually talk about the framing of this question. We haven't talked about our opinions yet, but Travis doesn't like how I framed it because he says nobody knows what I'm talking about. Should we have the Billy Graham rule or not in our lives?
I didn't say that's not true. I didn't say nobody understands what it means. I said not everybody understands what it means. That's very different.
And he said that because he didn't know what the Billy Graham rule was.
I had never heard of that term.
But I told him a lot of people know what it is. If you don't know what it is, very simply, the Billy Graham rule was he made the decision to never be alone with a woman who was not his wife for any reason. And Travis pointed out, unless it was his mother or his sister, or you get the drift.
His aunt, grandma, daughter.
Yeah. You get the drift. The point being,
exceptions.
Don't be alone with a woman who's not your wife ever. Never in the car, never in counseling, never in a room, whatever the situation
never
is.
In the elevator.
Never in the elevator. I think that might have even been a rule for him.
I think that's what it was. That's a MacArthur rule.
Yeah, so what do you think about that?
I agree with it.
Okay, that's it?
Yep.
Case closed?
I mean, it's pretty darn tight. That's airtight right there.
All right, so you'll give me your reasoning in a second, but would you, as a pastor, ever counsel a woman in your office, just you and the woman are in your office, but that people can see into the room or whatever the case is, so you would never have a counseling session with just a woman who's a member of your church?
Yeah, so I would not like to do that.
Okay.
So that's the easy answer right off the bat is I really don't want to do that. In no situation, in no scenario would I ever choose to do that, would I ever plan to do that. I never want to do that. So the question is, do I agree with the rule? Do I think it's a wise rule? Do I think it's a good rule? Yeah, absolutely. Does it mean that it's always going to happen? No. Do I want somebody else in the room while I'm counseling a woman? Yes. Whether that be another pastor, whether that be another female, somebody there for accountability. I mean, for goodness sake, doctors do this at hospitals. Doctors of the opposite sex will bring in either another doctor or another nurse or somebody of the same sex or opposite sex, whatever, for accountability so that they can remain above reproach.
Right. Doctors
do this. And our office is way higher as a pastor than that of a medical doctor. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. I love you, doctors. But yeah, no, and so absolutely should we strive to remain above reproach in that area because we could be tempted with our dark hearts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, are there scenarios where something could happen where I don't have somebody with me? And are there? Yeah, absolutely there are. And I would ask myself, what do I do next? Can I meet with the door open in a crowded area where people easily can view in and see us talking? Yeah, I think that's wise. If I, as a pastor, have a secretary who walks in to have a question about my work week, it's a meeting of a work week, and my table where I have my meeting is directly next to the hallway, and I keep everything open, and there's a large crowd and a large flow of people right outside who can easily view in. Is that okay? Yeah, I think that's okay. So I think that there's wisdom that has to be installed and injected into this rule. Is it a hard and fast rule? Obviously not.
Right.
But is it wise? I think so.
Yeah. There's a couple things that play into this. So I agree with what you're saying. I think that as pastors, we've got to do everything we can to be above reproach, and this is one of those areas. This is not the only area by any means, but it's one of them. I think it plays into even our current culture and social media. Billy Graham didn't have that when he was around, but I don't think as a pastor you should be having regular very intimate, I mean intimate in the sense of like personal, deeply personal conversations over text message with just you and another woman who's not your wife. Right. Excuse me. So I think that there's a lot of areas where this plays into it, where you're just exercising wisdom. You want to be above reproach. You're not saying, because the accusation is, well, you just think that women are just sex objects, and the only purpose for a woman being there is for you as a man to have a temptation. It's just, all that's just ridiculous. Like, we're not saying it's the woman's fault that we're tempted. We're not saying, like, none of that are we saying. We're saying it's a wise rule that you want to be above reproach. You don't want to put any, again, not just in this situation, you don't want to put yourself in any situation where there could be a temptation. Not saying there will be, but why would you even risk that? And furthermore, why would you risk literally ruining your entire ministry by allowing yourself to be in a situation where a false accusation could take place, and even if it's not true, it could ruin your ministry? And this, again, is one scenario where something like that could happen. So there's a lot to consider here. And I think it's a wise rule. I don't think it's hard and fast in every situation. Like, if you find yourself, there is a member of your church who's a lady who needs counseling, and you're not able to get somebody else in the room with you, find ways to set up parameters to be wise about it, but meet with them. Don't neglect the care of the women in your congregation for the sake of checking the box of a specific rule, right. But don't neglect the principle either as you do that. So, because that's the concern. Some people say, well, the Billy Graham rule causes the pastors to only minister to men and not to women. That's baloney, in my opinion. I don't see how that holds any water. There is not a single. I hope there's never a single woman who's a member of our church that does not feel like she can be shepherded and cared for well by the pastors of our church just because of that. Like, it's actually not a huge barrier, like it's never been a hard thing for me to make sure that rule is established.
Right.
So anyway, that's some of my thoughts on it. But.
Oh yeah. I mean, like any rule, it's typically, if it's a good rule, it's grounded in a good principle. Mm-hmm. And that's why the rule was created. Mm-hmm. And it's the old Southern Baptist pitfall. I don't mean to pick on them. But they take a good principle and they put rules around it,
right?
And those rules kind of look like fences that are gradually bigger and bigger circles around the principle that they're trying to protect.
Yeah.
And that's where you could take this rule to a legalistic point.
It's better to call it a principle than a rule.
Right. So and that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So if it's a principle where you're trying to apply it to be wise, but it's not a rule, it's not hard and fast, everything that we're talking about, because that's fine. But you can, if you find yourself in this rule category, you can find yourself being legalistic about it, and then you're going to just cover yourself in a lot of guilt and shame that's unneeded because on your family vacation, you went down to the hotel lobby to pick up pizza for your family, and you got on the elevator to go back up to the 15th floor, and the elevator stopped on the second story, and a female in a bathing suit who just got done with the pool got onto the elevator, and you start to flip your lid, and you're like, I'm sinning because I'm alone in an elevator. God help me.
Yeah.
And you drop your pizza and run. Don't do that. So what I'm saying is, like, you take the principles. If you close your eyes, if you're in the elevator at that point, you know what I'm saying? Turn around, stare at the corner like a freak. Look at your pizza. Be excited about the pizza. But don't take it too far, because that's when you start bleeding over into that line of legalism, which you want to avoid.
Some people say this is a ridiculous rule or principle because, for example, Jesus was alone with the woman at the well, and so why would we have a principle that Jesus didn't have? And man, there's a lot of things I can say in response to that.
Should we answer
that?
Go ahead, T-ball, hit it.
Well,
because he's God.
Things. Yeah, there's a couple things. You're not Jesus.
Because he's God.
But also, like, Jesus was tempted in every way that we are. And so I think there were, in some senses, that Jesus faced sexual temptation in some form. Now, I don't know all the areas that took place.
That's a leftover question.
But without sin, we've had the conversation, could Jesus have sinned? And we said, no, he could not have.
Right, right.
Nobody, that can be another episode, though. That can be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
He's tempted in Not in every single specific temptation.
Was he tempted in every specific temptation,
No, he was
including sexual immorality?
Ooh. Maybe that is a leftover episode.
That's a question right
We'll
there.
see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't feel comfortable with that answer.
Maybe this bled over into another episode.
Is this our
real
first
quick.
Calvert Catechism debate that we're going to have?
I don't know.
Do you guys want that, by the way? Listeners, we've talked about before having a debate between Kenny and I ourselves on something that we're completely, it's not like a massive, horrible issue, but it'd be fun to debate each other on something that we genuinely disagree on. Would you like to listen to that? Let us know.
I feel like we should do that. That's going to be the next leftover episode. We just decided that right here.
On that one?
Yeah.
Well,
We'll do that.
I need to study on that one.
No, you don't.
What do you mean?
I want to hear
You
what
don't
you
need theology.
No, we
don't
don't
need
because leftovers is the point of leftovers is you don't get to study. You get to just answer it. All right, so back to our question here. The Billy Graham rule, is it a good and wise thing? Yeah, it's a wise thing. Don't get too legalistic about it. Does this matter? People go, why does this even matter? Why are you all talking about this? Well, because there's a lot of Christian leaders who have fallen, and some of it, not all of it, some of it has started with them allowing themselves to become too intimate, too close to a female who was not their wife.
All too often.
Yeah, I mean, that happens, absolutely. And sometimes it happens innocently. Sometimes it happens with them going, you know what, this is not a big deal.
Yeah.
Let me have this counseling session for 2 hours in the church alone where nobody's around. My wife doesn't even know I'm having the conversation. And they think it's innocent, and maybe initially it is.
Or the wife does know.
Yeah, and maybe initially it is, right? But you don't know what can happen. You can't trust your flesh.
No.
And again, none of that is saying, this is another leftover episode, by the way, none of that is saying that it's the woman's fault that you're tempted to lust, because it's not. You're responsible for your own sin.
Right.
But it is saying you're putting yourself in a situation that you could be given to temptation. So that's ridiculous to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I think that's I think that you're spot on with it. But it's a good rule.
Yeah.
It's a good principle. Yeah. And I just to answer the question explicitly, I think that we would both not only agree with the principle, but try to apply it to our lives, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to be above reproach, and to the point that we're trying to make here, we just don't trust our hearts. We don't trust our hearts, and I really, really would argue to any Christian listening to this that is a really helpful and wise principle to live your life on. Don't trust yourself.
Yep.
Stop trusting yourself, because you may think that we are stone cold crazy for actually agreeing with this principle and thinking that it's good and wise, because you think, wow, you must be so weak. Yeah. Well, brother, you might really need to evaluate your heart. I am very weak, and you might want to stop trusting your flesh, homeboy.
Yeah, because this is not just a principle for should a man be alone with a woman or a woman alone with a man. Like this is a general principle across the board. Should you put yourself in a position where you could be tempted? Like it's a very basic question.
Do you think that you should carry hot coals close to your chest?
Right.
Kenny, is that
right?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, of course not.
No, I smoke meat with hot coals.
I don't carry them. I eat my meat with them.
So that's I think that's good, man. We say 15 minutes or less. This can be the or
this
less
has
portion.
Been less.
Because now we've got another leftover episodes that we got to record real quick.
We have too many leftover episodes right now.
If you got a question or something you want us to talk about, email us at calforcatechism@gmail.com. I keep throwing that in there these days because I want some emails, y'all.
Yeah.
Appreciate you listening. Share it if it's helpful. If it's not, just forget about it and move on to the next episode.
After giving us a 5-star review.
Yes, thank you. All right, signing off. This has been Kenny and
Travi B.
Bye.
Bye.